Commander Veshala stood in the central observation room, her crystalline body reflecting the pale light of their dying star. She had served the Kelhari Defense Fleet for 40 years, and in all that time she had never felt fear like this. The screen in front of her displayed numbers that made no sense. Numbers that should not exist. Her senior scientist, a thin crystalline being named Torvan, stood beside her with his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Run it again," Veshala said. Her voice came out steady, but inside she felt like she was breaking apart. Torvan touched the controls with one long finger. The calculations ran again. The same result appeared. Their star, which they had studied for 300 years, was not behaving as predicted. The models were wrong. All of them. 72 hours, Torvan said quietly. Maybe 73 if we are lucky. Then the star will collapse and explode. The blast will destroy everything within 5 light years. Veshala looked at the numbers again. She wanted them to change. She wanted to find an error in the math. But she had checked 20 times already. The science was solid. Their sun was going to explode in 3 days, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "How many can we evacuate?" she asked. Torvan pulled up another screen. "We have 17 colony ships. They were built for slow evacuation over many years. If we push them beyond safety limits and pack people inside like cargo, we might save 50,000. Maybe 60,000 if we are very lucky." Veshala felt her body go cold. "Our population is 4.3 billion. Yes." The word hung in the air between them like a death sentence. They stood in silence for a long moment. Outside the window, their world continued as normal. People went to work. Children played in the gardens. No one knew yet that they had 3 days to live. "I need to inform the council," Veshala said finally. The emergency council meeting lasted 6 hours. The leaders of the Kelhari civilization sat in a circular chamber, their crystalline bodies dim with shock and grief. They reviewed the data. They ran their own calculations. They all came to the same conclusion. There was no escape. Not for most of them. The council voted to begin a lottery system. 50,000 names would be chosen at random. Those people would board the colony ships. The rest would stay behind and face the end with dignity. It was the only logical solution, they said. It was the only fair way. Veshala left the council chamber feeling hollow. She walked through the command center where her crew worked at their stations. Young technician Crescent sat at the communications desk, monitoring deep space signals as always. He looked up as she passed, and she could see the question in his eyes. The news would be made public within the hour. She went to her private office and sealed the door. Then, for the first time in 40 years of service, Commander Veshala sat down and allowed herself to cry. The announcement went out at sunset. The reaction was exactly what Veshala expected. Panic in some areas, quiet acceptance in others. The Kelhari were a logical people, but even logic could not remove the sting of death. Families held each other. Parents looked at their children and wondered if they would be among the lucky ones chosen. The lottery would begin in the morning. Veshala worked through the night. If these were her last 3 days, she would spend them trying to save as many people as possible. She sat with the engineers, searching for any way to increase the capacity of the colony ships, remove the cargo holds, strip out the life support redundancies, pack people into every available space. They gained 5,000 more spaces, 5,000 more lives. It was not nearly enough, but it was something. At dawn, Crescent appeared at her door. The young technician looked like he had not slept either. His crystalline surface was dull with exhaustion. "Commander," he said, "I found something in the database." Veshala looked up from her work. "Unless it is another colony ship hidden somewhere, I do not want to hear it." "It is not a ship," Crescent said. "It is a species. Humans." Veshala knew about humans. Every species in the database knew about humans. They were a strange race from a world called Earth, far across the galaxy. They were known for being unpredictable, emotional, and oddly friendly. They had something they called a rescue doctrine that made no logical sense. They would risk their own lives to save complete strangers even if it cost them greatly. "What about them?" Veshala asked. Crescent pulled up a file on his datapad. 30 years ago, they provided their coordinates to the Galactic database. They said any species in distress could contact them for help. No payment required, no debt incurred. They said it was just the right thing to do. Veshala stared at the file. The human coordinates were old. The contact frequency might not even work anymore. And even if it did, what could one species do? They were 4 billion people facing extinction in less than 3 days now. No one had that kind of rescue capability. It was impossible, but they had nothing to lose. Send a message, Veshala said, but make it brief. Do not ask them to save us. Just tell them what is happening. Let it be a record that we tried everything. Crescent nodded and returned to his station. Veshala watched him go, then turned back to her calculations. The lottery was starting in 1 hour. 55,000 names would be drawn. The rest would wait for the end. An hour later, the lottery began. Veshala listened to the names being called over the communication system. Each name was a life saved. Each name also represented thousands who would not be chosen. She heard crying in the halls. She heard families celebrating that they were selected, then going quiet when they realized their neighbors were not. It was the worst day of her life. Crescent appeared at her door again. The message has been sent, he said. I do not know if anyone will receive it. The coordinates are very old. What did you say? Veshala asked. Crescent pulled up the transmission text. Veshala read it slowly. This is the Kalahari people. Our star dies in 3 days. We have billions with nowhere to go. If anyone can hear this, we have exhausted all options. This is not a demand for rescue. This is a farewell. Veshala felt something break inside her chest. The message was perfect. It was honest. It asked for nothing because there was nothing to ask for. It was simply a goodbye to a universe that would keep turning after they were gone. Thank you, Crescent, she said softly. The young technician nodded and left her alone. Veshala returned to her work. The colony ships were loading now. Families said goodbye to loved ones. The chosen ones boarded the ships with tears streaming down their crystalline faces. No one wanted to be saved if it meant leaving everyone else behind, but there was no choice. The hours passed slowly. Veshala did not sleep. She coordinated the loading procedures, managed the crowds, tried to keep order as their civilization prepared to die. The star pulsed above them, growing more unstable by the hour. 18 hours after Crescent sent the message, Veshala was reviewing cargo manifest when she heard a shout from the communication station. Commander. Crescent's voice was high with shock. We received a response. Veshala dropped her data pad and ran across the command center. Other crew members gathered around Crescent's station. The young technician was staring at his screen like he could not believe what he was seeing. Play it, Veshala ordered. Crescent touched the controls. A voice came through the speakers. It was in a language the computer had to translate, but the tone was clear even before the words appeared on screen. The voice was calm, relaxed, almost cheerful. Kalahari friends, this is Captain Danny Price of the human vessel Phoenix Rising. We got your message. Hang tight, we're coming to get you. All of you. The command center went completely silent. Veshala read the translated words 3 times. All of you. The human had said all of you. That was impossible. That was mathematically, logically, scientifically impossible. No one could evacuate 4.3 billion people in less than 3 days. She composed a response, keeping her voice level despite the chaos in her mind. Human vessel, we appreciate the sentiment, but you do not understand the scale. We have 4.3 billion individuals. We cannot all be saved. The response came back in less than a minute. This time, the translator added a note that the human was making sounds of amusement. Ma'am, you called humanity. We don't leave people behind. We've got friends coming. Start getting your folks to the northern continent's flatlands. We'll need space to land. Veshala stared at the message. It made no logical sense, but something in that human's voice, even translated through a computer, carried absolute certainty. He spoke like the outcome was already decided. Like saving 4 billion people was just a matter of details. She looked around at her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for orders. Outside the window, their star pulsed with deadly light. They had 54 hours left. Veshala made a decision that defied all logic. Begin moving the population to the northern flatlands, she ordered. All of them. Not just the lottery winners, everyone. Her crew jumped into action. Maybe the humans were crazy. Maybe this was false hope. But Veshala decided that if they were going to die, they would die trying every possible option, no matter how impossible it seemed. The humans were coming. Somehow that thought made her crystalline heart beat just a little bit faster. The northern flatlands had never seen so many people. Millions of Kalahari gathered on the wide plains. their crystalline bodies catching the sick light of their dying star. They came in vehicles on foot, carrying their children and their most precious belongings. No one knew what was happening. The lottery winners were supposed to be on the colony ships already, but the orders had changed. Everyone was told to come to the flatlands and wait. Veshala stood on a command platform that her crew had set up in the center of the plains. She watched the crowds grow larger with each passing hour. Families huddled together. Parents held their children close. Everyone looked up at the sky, searching for something that made no sense. They were searching for humans. 36 hours remained before the supernova. Veshala had not slept in 2 days. Torvan stood beside her, checking the sensors constantly. "Anything?" she asked for the 100th time. "Nothing yet," Torvan replied. His voice was gentle. He did not say what they both knew, that this was probably a mistake, that they had moved billions of people for nothing, that they would all die here on these plains instead of in their homes. Crescent ran up to the platform, his crystalline feet kicking up dust. "Commander, I am detecting something. A ship just appeared at the edge of the system." Veshala felt her heart jump. "The Phoenix Rising?" "No," Crescent said, looking at his portable scanner. "The signature says it is called the Betty Lou. It is a mining freighter. It is heading straight for us. A mining freighter. Not a military rescue ship, not a massive passenger liner. A mining ship meant for hauling rocks and ore through space." Veshala wanted to laugh or cry, but she was too tired for either. The Betty Lou entered the atmosphere 20 minutes later. It was ugly, Veshala thought, all rough metal plating and exposed engine clusters. It looked like it had been built by someone who cared more about function than appearance. The ship lowered itself onto the flatlands with a roar of engines, sending dust flying everywhere. A ramp lowered from the side of the ship. A human woman walked down wearing a dirty worksuit and carrying a data pad. She was shorter than Veshala expected, with dark skin and her hair pulled back in a simple tie. She looked around at the millions of Kelhari, then spotted the command platform and walked over. "You must be Commander Veshala," the human said through a translation device on her collar. "I am Captain Kate Morris of the Betty Lou. Where do you want us to start loading?" Veshala stared at her. "You are alone? Just one ship?" Kate grinned. It was the first human smile Veshala had ever seen in person. It was wide and confident and made absolutely no sense given the situation. "Oh no, ma'am. I am just the first one here. Danny said to get started while we wait for the others." "Others?" Veshala repeated. Kate pointed at the sky. "Look up." Veshala looked. At first she saw nothing but the sick yellow light of their dying star. Then she saw a flash. Then another. Then dozens of flashes as ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and entered the system. "How many?" Torvan whispered beside her. Crescent was frantically checking his scanner. "I count 50 ships. No, wait, more are arriving. 100. 200. His voice rose with each number. "Commander, there are ships appearing everywhere." Veshala watched the sky fill with vessels, big ones and small ones. Military cruisers with their weapons powered down. Cargo haulers still marked with company logos. Even luxury passenger liners that looked like they had been designed for wealthy tourists. They all came down toward the flatlands like metal rain. Within 3 hours, over 600 human ships covered the northern continent. Veshala stood on her platform and tried to understand what she was seeing. Each ship was different. There was no uniformity, no standard design. Some were sleek and new. Others looked like they were held together with repairs and hope. But they all had one thing in common. Their ramps were lowering. Their cargo bays were opening. And humans were coming out. Humans were everywhere. They wore different uniforms, different clothes. Some looked like military personnel. Others looked like merchants or pilots or engineers. They moved through the crowds of Kelhari, speaking through translation devices, organizing groups, scanning identification crystals. "We need to get you folks on board," one human was saying to a family near Veshala. "Don't worry about your belongings. We will take everything we can. Just get yourselves safe first." Another human, an older man with gray hair, was directing traffic with hand signals. "You big ship over there. You small yacht to the left. Let's keep it moving, people." Veshala saw a luxury liner that still had a vacation company logo on its side. The owner, a young human woman named Sophie, was welcoming Kelhari families into rooms that were meant for paying passengers. She was smiling and chatting with them like they were guests at a hotel instead of refugees fleeing death. "Commander Vishala?" She turned. A human man stood at the base of her platform. He was young, maybe 30 in human years, with light brown skin and short dark hair. He wore a casual flight suit that had seen better days, and he was smiling that impossible human smile. "I am Captain Danny Price," he said. "Sorry I took a while to get here. Had to make some calls first." Vishala climbed down from the platform to meet him properly. Up close, she could see the tiredness in his eyes, but the smile never wavered. "You brought all these ships?" "Me and about 600 friends," Danny said. Every human vessel within 30 light years dropped what they were doing when they heard. Some of them were in the middle of cargo runs. Some were on vacation. A few were actually retired and pulled their ships out of storage. But they all came. Vishala looked out at the organized chaos. Millions of Kelhari were being loaded onto ships. Children were being carried aboard by gentle human hands. Elderly Kelhari were given priority seating. Medical supplies were being distributed. Food and water were being handed out. "I do not understand," Vishala said quietly. "Why would they come? They do not know us. There is no payment. No reward." Danny looked at her with genuine confusion. "You asked for help. That is reason enough." A human came running up to Danny, a shorter man with red hair and freckles. "Captain, we have a problem. The numbers still do not work. Even with 600 ships, we are going to be short. We can fit maybe 3 billion if we pack them in tight, but that leaves over 1 billion with nowhere to go." Danny's smile finally faded. He pulled out a datapad and checked the calculations himself. Vishala saw the numbers on his screen. The human was right. They did not have enough space. For a moment, Danny stood there in silence. Around him, the rescue operation continued. Humans and Kelhari working together to load ships as fast as possible, but it was not going to be enough. Mathematics did not lie. Then Danny looked up and that smile returned. "Who else can we call?" The red-haired human blinked. "What? Who else can we call?" Danny repeated. He activated his communication system, broadcasting on every channel. "This is Captain Danny Price to all human vessels. We need more ships. Spread the word to everyone. Not just humans, everyone." "Sir," another human said hesitantly, "the nearest reinforcements are 8 hours away. We only have 30 hours until the supernova." "Then we better start calling now," Danny said. He switched to a wideband transmission that would reach across multiple systems. His voice went out into space, clear and strong. "This is Captain Danny Price of Earth. We are at the Kelhari homeworld conducting emergency evacuation. We need help. All species, all nations, all ships. The Kelhari are a peaceful people facing extinction. There is no money in this, no political gain. Just people who need saving. If you can hear this message and you have a ship with space, we are asking for help." Vishala listened to the message echo across the communication bands. She wanted to tell Danny it was useless. Species did not work together like this. The galaxy was too big, too divided. Everyone looked after their own interests first. But she had thought the same thing about the humans, and look what happened. "We should continue loading," Danny said, turning back to his crew. "Even if no one else comes, we will save as many as we can." The work continued. Vishala joined the effort, helping to organize groups and direct traffic. She worked alongside humans, learning their names. Greg, who captained a cargo freighter and had jettisoned millions of credits worth of cargo into space to make room for refugees. Sophie, the luxury liner owner who was giving up a year's worth of business to save strangers. Kate, who had been halfway through a mining contract when the call came and turned her ship around without hesitation. They all smiled while they worked, even when they were exhausted, even when the numbers showed they would fail. They smiled and kept going. 4 hours passed. The evacuation was going faster than Vishala had thought possible. The humans had no central command structure, no rigid chain of authority. They just talked to each other, coordinated on the fly, solved problems as they appeared. It was chaos, but it was chaos that worked. Crescent appeared at her side, his scanner beeping urgently. "Commander, I am detecting new ships entering the system. More humans?" Vishala asked. "No," Crescent said slowly. "I do not think so. The signatures are different. These ships are much larger." Vishala followed him back to the command platform. Danny was already there, looking at his own scanner with an expression she could not read. "Those are Vrin carriers," Danny said quietly. Vishala knew about the Vrin, everyone did. They were a warrior species, proud, strong, and territorial. They had fought a border war with humanity 20 years ago. It had ended in a peace treaty, but the two species were not exactly friends. 3 massive Vryn carriers entered the atmosphere. They were dark metal, covered in weapon mounts and armor plating. They looked like they were built for war, not rescue. They landed on the outskirts of the flatlands with earth-shaking thuds. A Vryn commander walked out from the largest carrier. He was tall, easily 3 meters, with dark blue skin and the distinctive bone crests of his species. He walked straight to Danny, and Veshala prepared for some kind of confrontation. The Vryn commander looked down at Danny, then he smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Humans are crazy. But you are crazy in the right way. We will take 500,000. Danny's smile could have lit up the sky. Welcome to the party. More ships began appearing. Ships from species Veshala had only read about. The Torlathi, who were known for being profit-minded traders, arrived with their commercial fleet. Consider this a debt repaid, their spokeswoman said, referring to some past incident Veshala did not know about. The Sisterhood of Nexa brought hospital ships. The Korthian Collective sent automated haulers. Even the mysterious Wanderers, who barely spoke to anyone, offered their huge generation ships. Within 12 hours, the sky was so full of ships that it blocked out the light of their dying star. Over 4,000 vessels from dozens of species crowded the system. Species that had never worked together were coordinating rescue efforts, guided by humans who somehow made it all work. Veshala stood on her platform and watched the galaxy come together. A young Kelhari child nearby tugged on her arm. Commander, why are they smiling? Do they not know we are all going to die? Veshala looked at Danny, who was coordinating with a Vryn warrior. They were both exhausted, covered in dust and grinning at some shared joke. She finally understood. They are smiling because they have already decided we are going to live, Veshala told the child. For them, the outcome is not in question anymore. The only question is how. 20 hours remained before the supernova. The northern flatlands had transformed into the largest rescue operation the galaxy had ever seen. 4,000 ships from 30 different species created a city of metal and hope under a dying star. Veshala walked through the organized chaos, watching miracles happen every minute. A human engineer named Pete worked alongside a Vryn technician to modify cargo bay doors, making them wider for faster loading. They argued about the best approach, their voices loud and passionate, but their hands worked together without hesitation. A group of Torlathi merchants had set up what they called a logistics center, using their legendary planning skills to optimize the loading process. They worked with young Crescent, who had proven to have a talent for coordinating different species. Together, they directed the flow of Kelhari families to the right ships, making sure no one was left behind. You have 47 family units waiting at Dock 7, a Torlathi merchant told Crescent, her many eyes tracking multiple data streams at once. The Wanderer ship can take them, but they need to board in the next 10 minutes. I will get them there, Crescent said, already running toward Dock 7. Veshala continued her walk, checking on different areas of the operation. She passed a medical station where the Sisterhood of Nexa had set up treatment centers. Human doctors worked alongside Nexan healers, treating injuries and helping elderly Kelhari, who struggled with the stress of evacuation. How is your breathing? A human doctor named Lisa asked an old Kelhari man. We can give you something to help with the altitude if the ship ride makes you uncomfortable. The old man's crystalline body flickered with gratitude. You are very kind. I thought I would die today. Now I might see tomorrow. Lisa smiled, that human expression that Veshala was beginning to understand. You will definitely see tomorrow, and many days after that. Near Dock 15, Veshala found Kate directing the loading of the Betty Lou. The mining freighter was packed beyond any reasonable capacity, but Kate was still finding ways to fit more people. I can take another 200 if we use the engine room, Kate was telling her crew. Yeah, I know it is against regulations, but regulations were not written for this situation. A younger human, one of Kate's crew members, hesitated. Captain, if we pack them that tight, there is no room for error. One system failure and people could die. Kate looked at him steadily. And if we do not take them, they definitely die. I will take that risk. We will just have to make sure nothing fails. The crew member nodded and went to prepare the engine room for passengers. Veshala approached Kate. You are risking your ship, Your crew, your life, Kate shrugged, checking her data pad. Honestly, Commander, I have had this ship for 12 years. I know every bolt and wire. She will not let me down. And if she does, well, at least I went down trying to save people instead of hauling rocks through space. A Vryn warrior approached, carrying a Kelhari child who had gotten separated from her family. The massive warrior, who stood 3 times the size of the child, held her with surprising gentleness. I found this little one crying, the Vryn said. She says her parents are on Dock 3. Kate took the child's hand. I will get her there. Thank you. The Vryn nodded and went back to help with the loading. Veshala watched him go, still amazed by what she was seeing. The Vryn were warriors. They valued strength and honor. Yet here they were, carrying children and organizing rescue efforts like it was the most natural thing in the world. It does not make sense, Veshala said to Kate. Your people fought the Vryn in a war. Now you work together like old friends. Kate smiled while walking the lost child toward Dock 3. Yeah, we had our differences. Some border disputes, cultural misunderstandings. But Danny once told me something. He said the size of your enemy is not as important as the size of your cause. Right now, the cause is saving 4 billion people. Next to that, our old arguments seem pretty small. They found the child's parents at Dock 3. The reunion was tearful and joyful. The parents thanked Kate and Veshala over and over, their crystalline bodies shining with relief. Veshala continued her rounds. Everywhere she looked, she saw cooperation that should not be possible. Species that barely spoke to each other were sharing resources. Ships designed for war were being used for mercy. Beings from across the galaxy worked shoulder to shoulder, united by a simple human idea that no one should be left behind. 15 hours remained. Danny gathered the captains for a brief meeting. They stood in a circle near the command platform, representing 30 different species. Some breathed oxygen, some breathed methane, some did not breathe at all. But they all listened as Danny outlined the final push. We have loaded 3.5 billion so far, Danny said, looking at his datapad. That is incredible. That is a miracle. But we still have 700 million to go, and we are running out of time. A Korthian captain spoke through his translation unit. Our automated haulers are at maximum capacity. We cannot take more without compromising life support. Same with our carriers, the Vryn commander added. We are packed beyond safety limits already. Danny nodded. I understand. No one is asking you to take risks you cannot handle, but we are so close. We just need to push a little harder. What do you suggest? A Torlathi merchant asked. Danny looked around at all the ships covering the flatlands. We have been loading by family units to keep people together. That is important. That is right. But maybe for these last few hours we focus on speed. We load people wherever there is space, regardless of family groups. We reunite them after we are safe. There was silence. Veshala understood the reluctance. Splitting up families, even temporarily, went against every instinct. But Danny was right. They were running out of time. I agree with the human, the Vryn commander said. My people understand difficult choices. We split families now and bring them together later. It is better than the alternative. The other captains nodded one by one. The decision was made, the final push began. The loading process doubled in speed. Kelhari families were told they might be separated temporarily, but they would be reunited soon. Most understood. Some protested, but Veshala explained the situation clearly. Stay together and die, or separate briefly and live. They chose life. Veshala worked alongside her people, scanning identification crystals and recording which families went to which ships. Kurisin maintained a master database, tracking every single Kelhari. They would need that information later to reunite everyone. A young Kelhari couple approached Veshala, holding their infant child. They say there is room on different ships. They want to send me to one and my partner to another. What about our baby? Veshala knelt down to their level. Which ship has medical facilities closer? The Nexan hospital ship, the partner said. Then send your baby there with your partner. You go where they tell you. I promise you, on my honor as commander, we will bring your family back together. This is not forever. This is just until we are safe. The couple hesitated, then nodded. They held each other for a long moment, then split up toward their assigned ships. Veshala watched them go, her heart heavy with the weight of these decisions. 10 hours remained. The star above them pulsed with increasing violence. Scientists monitoring the readings confirmed that the supernova was building faster than predicted. They might have less time than they thought. Danny received the update and immediately got on the communication network. All ships, we need to speed this up. I know everyone is tired. I know your crews are working miracles. But we need one more push. Just a few more hours. Veshala saw humans who had not slept in days forcing themselves to keep going. She saw Vryn warriors carrying equipment twice their weight to clear loading areas faster. She saw Torlathi merchants abandoning their careful planning in favor of pure speed. She saw the Sisterhood of Nexa healing crew members on the spot so they could get back to work immediately. 8 hours remained. The population count was dropping. 4 billion, then 3.8 billion, then 3.5 billion. Every number represented thousands of lives saved. Families given a future, but there were still so many left. Veshala found herself working at Dock 27, personally scanning crystals and directing people onto a Wanderer generation ship. Her hands shook from exhaustion. Her crystalline body was dim with fatigue. But she kept working. A young Kelhari girl, maybe 10 years old, stopped in front of her. Are we really going to be okay? Veshala looked at the girl, then at the human working beside her. A man named Colin who had joked earlier that he had been on vacation when the call came, and this was way more exciting than sitting on a beach anyway. Yes, Veshala told the girl. We are going to be okay. These people will not let us down. The girl smiled and ran up the ramp into the ship. 6 hours remained. The count was at 4.1 billion loaded. Only 200 million left. They were so close. So incredibly close. But the star was becoming unstable. Scientists warned that it could collapse early. Maybe in 6 hours. Maybe in 5. Maybe less. Danny called another meeting. His face was drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes were still determined. We can make it. We are almost there. Just keep going. What if it goes early? A Korthian captain asked. What if we are still loading when it collapses? Then we will be loading when it collapses, Danny said simply. But we do not leave until everyone is on board. That is the deal. The Vryn commander laughed, that sharp-toothed smile showing. I knew I liked you humans. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Danny grinned back. Probably. 4 hours remained. 4.2 billion loaded. 100 million left. The ships were so full that people were standing in hallways, sitting in storage rooms, packed into every available space. The safety margins were gone. The comfort was gone. But the capacity kept growing because everyone refused to give up. 3 hours remained. 4.25 billion loaded. 50 million left. Veshala's crew set up priority loading for the final groups. The very young, the very old, the sick and injured. They would go first. Everyone else would follow as fast as possible. 2 hours remained. 4.28 billion loaded. 20 million left. The star pulsed again, a massive flare that lit up the sky. Scientists confirmed this was the beginning of the collapse. The supernova was starting. They had maybe 2 hours, maybe less. Danny was everywhere at once, moving from dock to dock, encouraging people, solving problems, refusing to show any fear. Veshala stayed close to him, learning from his example. If the humans could stay calm in the face of death, then so could she. 1 hour remained. 4.295 billion loaded. 5 million left. The ground started to shake. The star's gravity was fluctuating as it began to collapse. Ships rattled against their landing gear. Crews worked faster, throwing aside the last of their safety protocols in favor of pure speed. 30 minutes remained. 4.299 billion loaded. 1 million left. Veshala saw the last groups running toward the ships, families sprinting across the flatlands. Humans and Vryn and Torlathi helping the elderly and injured. Everyone moving as fast as they could. The star pulsed again, brighter than before. Scientists shouted warnings. The collapse was accelerating. 20 minutes remained. 4.2995 billion loaded. 500,000 left. 10 minutes remained. 4.2999 billion loaded. 100,000 left. 5 minutes remained. Veshala stood at the command platform, watching the final group's board. So close. They were so close. 3 minutes remained. Danny stood beside her, watching his scanner. Last count shows 98 people still on the ground. Where are they? Crescent checked his database frantically. They are scattered, different locations. We missed them somehow. Danny got on the communication network. All ships, we have 98 people unaccounted for. I need search teams. Now. Before he finished speaking, humans were pouring out of ships. Vryn warriors joined them. Torlathi merchants, Nexan healers. They spread across the flatlands in a final desperate search. 2 minutes remained. The ground shook violently as the star above began its final collapse. Vishala watched from the command platform as search teams scattered across the flatlands, looking for the 98 missing Kalhari. Every second counted now. Every moment could be their last. Found a group of 12 near the old landing site. A human voice shouted over the communication network. Getting them to the nearest ship! I have 3 elderly Kalhari who could not keep up with their group, a Vryn warrior reported. Carrying them to Dock 40 now. 22 found in a shelter, a Torlathi merchant called out. They did not hear the final boarding call. Moving them out. The numbers dropped. 98 became 86, then 73, then 59. 1 minute remained. Danny was shouting coordinates into his communicator, directing teams to the remaining locations. His face was pale with exhaustion, but his voice never wavered. There are 15 near the southern ridge. Someone get to them! Kate's voice came through. Betty Lou is closest. I'm going. You do not have time, Danny said. Then I better hurry, Kate replied. Vishala watched Kate's ship lift off and race toward the southern ridge. The star pulsed again and the light became blinding. Scientists were screaming warnings that everyone ignored. The collapse was happening now. Right now, 30 seconds, I have the 15. Kate's voice was strained. Pulling up now. Get clear of the atmosphere, Danny ordered. All ships prepare for emergency jump. The Betty Lou climbed desperately, engines screaming at maximum power. On Vishala's scanner, she could see 44 people still unaccounted for. 44 lives that they could not find in time. 20 seconds. Wait, Crescent shouted, pointing at his screen. I found them. They are all together in one location. An emergency bunker at the old research station. They must have taken shelter when the quake started. Where? Danny demanded. 3 kilometers east of here. Vishala looked at the map. 3 kilometers. In 20 seconds. It was impossible. No ship could get there, land, load people, and escape in 20 seconds. Danny was already running, not to a ship. He was running on foot, sprinting across the flatlands toward the research station. Vishala watched in shock as other humans followed him. Then Vryn warriors. Then even a few Torlathi merchants who were definitely not built for running. What are they doing? Torvin gasped beside her. They cannot reach them in time. But Vishala understood. The humans were going anyway. Even if it was impossible, even if it meant dying, they were going because those were people who needed help. And humans did not leave people behind. 15 seconds. Danny reached the research station first, his human legs carrying him faster than should be possible. He found the bunker entrance and pulled the door open. 44 Kalhari stared up at him from inside the shelter, their crystalline faces showing confusion and hope. Time to go, Danny shouted. Everyone out now. The Kalhari climbed out of the bunker. The other rescuers arrived, helping people up, carrying children, supporting the elderly. But they were still 3 kilometers from the ships. There was no time to run back. 10 seconds, Vishala made a decision. She grabbed the controls of the nearest ship, a small human yacht that was already loaded but could still move. She had never piloted a human vessel before, but the controls were simple enough. She lifted off and flew straight toward the research station. Commander, what are you doing? Torvin yelled. Saving my people, Vishala replied. 5 seconds. She reached the research station and hovered 2 meters off the ground. The cargo ramp was already opening. Danny and the others were pushing Kalhari up into the ship, not bothering with the ramp, just lifting them through the cargo bay doors. 3 seconds. Go, Danny shouted at her. Get them out of here. Get on the ship. Vishala shouted back, no time. Danny was still outside, along with a dozen other rescuers who had helped get the Kalhari aboard. Just go. 2 seconds. Vishala saw the star begin to rupture. She saw the first burst of the supernova starting. In moments, the shockwave would hit them. Nothing could survive it. She made a choice that violated every regulation, every rule of ship operation. She activated the jump drive while still in atmosphere, something that was never supposed to be done. The human yacht screamed in protest, alarms blaring, but it responded. Space twisted around them. 1 second. The world went white. The jump drive pulled them out of normal space just as the supernova shockwave hit the planet. For a fraction of a second, Veshala saw Danny and the other rescuers on the ground below, looking up at the ship as it vanished. She saw them smiling. Then they were gone, swallowed by the explosion. The yacht emerged from the jump 2 light-years away, alarms still screaming, systems overloaded from the emergency atmospheric jump. Veshala fought with the controls, trying to keep the ship stable. Behind her, 44 Kelhari held onto whatever they could as the ship shook violently. "Where are we?" One of them asked. "Safe," Veshala said. Then she checked her scanners, looking for the other ships, looking for the fleet. Her screen lit up with thousands of signals. All the rescue ships had made it. They were all there, spread across a wide area of space, but safe. She opened the communication channel. "This is Commander Veshala. I have the final 44. We are all safe." Silence on the channel. Then a roar of celebration from 4,000 ships at once. Cheers and shouts and sounds of joy in 30 different languages. They had done it. All 4.3 billion Kelhari had been saved. But the celebration in Veshala's heart was hollow. She kept thinking about Danny and the others. The ones who stayed behind. The ones who died so those 44 could live. She looked at the Kelhari she had rescued. Families holding each other. Children crying with relief. Elderly people praying in their traditional way. All alive because of the sacrifice of beings they had never met. "Commander." Torvan's voice came through her ship's communication system. He was on one of the colony ships. "You saved them. You saved the last group." "Danny saved them," Veshala corrected. "He and the others. They gave their lives." "I know," Torvan said quietly. "The whole fleet knows. The humans are honoring them already. They have declared them heroes." Veshala wanted to feel happy. They had achieved the impossible. Every single Kelhari had been saved. But the cost was so high. Those rescuers died because of her people. Because the Kelhari needed saving. A new voice came on the communication channel. Familiar voice that made Veshala's heart stop. "Commander Veshala, this is Captain Danny Price. I heard you tried to leave without me." "That is pretty rude." Veshala stared at her communication panel. "How? I saw you. I saw the explosion." Danny laughed, that impossible human laugh. "Yeah, that was close. Betty Lou came back for us." Kate decided that since she was already breaking regulations by going back into atmosphere, she might as well break a few more. "She grabbed us with a cargo net about half a second before the shockwave hit. I think I lost a few years off my life from the stress, but we made it." "You are alive," Veshala said. Her voice was shaking. "All of you are alive." "Every single one of us," Kate's voice joined the channel. "Humans, Vryn, Torlathi, everyone. We do not leave people behind, remember?" The relief that flooded through Veshala was so strong she had to sit down. They had all made it. Everyone. Not just the Kelhari, but the rescuers too. The impossible had been achieved completely. "Thank you," Veshala said. It was not enough. Those 2 words could never be enough for what had been done, but it was all she could say. "You are welcome," Danny replied. "Now we need to figure out where to take 4 billion refugees. Anyone have any ideas?" The communication channels erupted with offers. The Vryn offered temporary shelter on 3 of their colony worlds. The Torlathi suggested splitting groups among several trading outposts. The Sisterhood of Nexa offered their medical facilities for anyone who needed care. Even species Veshala had never heard of were volunteering resources. Over the next few hours, a plan came together. The Kelhari would be split into groups and taken to 12 different worlds, all volunteered by different species. They would live there temporarily while the galactic community searched for a permanent new homeworld for them. Veshala listened to the planning and felt something she had not felt in days. Not just relief, not just gratitude, but hope for the future. Her people would survive. They would rebuild. And they would remember the day that the galaxy came together to save them. She looked at her screen, watching the thousands of ships organizing themselves for the journey to the temporary homes. Human ships and Vryn carriers and Torlathi merchants and so many others, all working together like they had been allies forever. Creason appeared on her communication screen. "Commander, we are getting messages from across the galaxy. News of the rescue spread fast. Everyone wants to know how we did it. What are you telling them? Veshala asked. Crescent smiled, his crystalline face bright. I am telling them the truth. That we sent a message to humanity and humanity refused to let us die alone. That they called the galaxy together and proved that impossible is just a word. Veshala nodded. That is a good answer. The fleet began to move, each group heading toward their assigned temporary home. Veshala's small yacht followed the Phoenix Rising. Staying close to Danny's ship, she felt safer near the humans even though the danger was past. 6 months had passed since the day the Kalhari star died. 6 months since the impossible rescue that changed the galaxy forever. Veshala stood in her temporary quarters on the Vryn colony world and looked at the news reports that filled her screens. The rescue had become legend. Every species in the galaxy knew the story. Some called it the Kalhari miracle. Others called it the day the galaxy united. The humans, in their typical modest way, just called it doing the right thing. But the impact went far beyond one successful rescue. In the 6 months since, 17 other major rescue operations had been conducted across the galaxy. Species that had never worked together were forming mutual aid agreements. The Vryn and the Torlathi, who had barely tolerated each other before, now had active trade partnerships. The Sisterhood of Nexa had opened their medical knowledge to dozens of species who had previously been too proud to ask for help. The galaxy was changing. And it had started with a smile. Commander Veshala? Crescent's voice came through her door communicator. The shuttle is ready. We should leave soon if we want to make the dedication ceremony. Veshala took one last look at her reflection. Her crystalline body was still dim from the stress of the past months, but she was healing. They all were. She picked up the speech she had written and rewritten a dozen times. Today was important. Today they would dedicate the new Kalhari colony world. The shuttle ride took 3 hours. Veshala sat with Torvan and Crescent, watching through the windows as they approached their new home. The planet was beautiful, green and blue with vast oceans and continents covered in forests. The Vryn had found it in an unclaimed system and offered it to the Kalhari as a permanent home. It is strange, Torvan said quietly. 6 months ago we thought we would all die. Now we have a new world, a better world than the one we lost. Do you think our people will be happy here? Krisineskid Veshala smiled. I think we will make it home. That is what matters. The dedication site was in the planet's northern continent, on a hill overlooking what would become the first Kalhari city. Thousands had gathered for the ceremony. Kalhari families stood alongside representatives from every species that had helped in the rescue. Veshala saw human flags and Vryn banners and Torlathi symbols all mixed together. A stage had been built at the top of the hill. Veshala climbed the steps slowly, feeling the weight of what she was about to say. This speech would be recorded. It would be studied. It would become part of Kalhari history. She reached the podium and looked out at the crowd. She saw Danny standing near the front, wearing a formal uniform for once instead of his casual flight suit. Kate was beside him along with Greg and Sophie and dozens of other human captains. The Vryn commander stood tall in the back, his dark blue skin contrasting with the green landscape. Torlathi merchants gathered in small groups, their many eyes tracking everything. The crowd grew quiet. Veshala activated the podium's amplification system. Her voice would carry to everyone present and to billions watching across the galaxy. I am Commander Veshala of the Kalhari people, she began. 6 months ago I stood on my homeworld and calculated our doom with certainty. We had 3 days before our star would explode. We had 4.3 billion people, and only enough ships to save 50,000. The mathematics were clear. The science was solid. We were going to die. She paused, letting the words settle. I tell you this not to dwell on the past, but to emphasize what happened next, because what came next defied every calculation we had made. What came next proved that mathematics, while useful, cannot measure the most important things in the universe. Veshala looked directly at Danny. We sent a message, not a request for rescue. We believed rescue was impossible. We sent a farewell, a final record that we had existed, that we had tried, that we had hoped until the very end. Her voice grew stronger. And then humanity answered. Captain Danny Price responded to our farewell with words I will never forget. He said, hang tight, we are coming to get you. All of you. The human section of the crowd smiled. Veshala saw that expression. That confidence, that refusal to accept defeat. She understood it now. It was not arrogance. It was determination given form. I argued with Captain Price, Veshala continued. I told him the numbers. I explained the impossibility. Do you know what he did? He laughed. He laughed at impossible odds because he had already made his choice. The outcome was not in question. The only question was how to achieve it. She gestured to the crowd of different species. 600 human ships arrived first. Then more humans called others, not just their own people, but everyone. They reached out to former enemies, to rivals, to species they barely knew. And they asked for help. Not demanded, not bargained. They simply asked. The Vryn commander nodded, his sharp teeth showing in a smile. Veshala continued. The Vryn came bringing their carriers and their warriors. The Torlathi came, offering their ships and their legendary planning skills. The Sisterhood of Nexa brought medical facilities. The Korthian Collective sent their haulers. The Wanderers offered their generation ships. Species from across the galaxy, many of whom had never worked together before, united for one purpose, to save strangers they had never met. She had to pause to control her emotions. The memory of that day still overwhelmed her. Within hours, over 4,000 ships crowded our system. Species that had fought wars with each other worked side by side. Warriors carried children. Merchants abandoned profit for mercy. Everyone pushed beyond their limits, broke their own rules, took risks they should not have taken. All because humanity showed them that some things are more important than safety or profit or old grudges. Veshala looked down at her speech, then decided to speak from her heart instead. We calculated our doom with certainty. What we could not calculate was humanity's refusal to accept that certainty. We could not measure the power of hope. We could not quantify the strength of determination. We could not predict that one species' smile in the face of death would inspire an entire galaxy to achieve the impossible. She looked at Danny again. You smiled when you should have been afraid. You worked when you should have given up. You risked your life to save the last 44 of my people when you could have escaped. And when I asked you why, you said something that I will carry with me forever. You said that anyone with enough hope to send a message into the dark deserves a chance to live. The crowd was silent. Veshala could see crystalline tears on many Kelhari faces. Human eyes glistened with emotion. Even the stoic Vryn seemed moved. Today we dedicate this new world as our home, Veshala said. But we also dedicate ourselves to a new purpose. We learn from humanity that hope is not just a feeling. It is a choice. It is action. It is the decision to smile at impossible odds and refuse to accept defeat. She raised her voice. We sent a message of farewell. Humanity answered with a smile. And in that smile was a promise. You are not alone. You will not be abandoned. Impossible is just another challenge to overcome. That day, 4.3 billion Kelhari learned what it means when someone says humanity, no matter what. The crowd erupted. Applause and cheers in 30 different languages filled the air. Kelhari resonated with emotion, their crystalline bodies shining bright for the first time since the rescue. Humans hugged each other. Vryn warriors saluted. Torlathi merchants made their traditional gesture of respect. Veshala waited for the noise to fade, then spoke her final words. This world will be our home. But it is not just a Kelhari world. It is a world built by the galaxy working together. It is a monument to what we can achieve when we refuse to give up on each other. And it stands as proof that the best thing in this universe is not technology or wealth or power. It is the simple human idea that everyone deserves a chance to live, and that no one should face the dark alone. She stepped back from the podium. The applause was deafening. Danny climbed the steps and met her at the top. He extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. That was a good speech. Commander, Danny said, smiling. I learned from good teachers, Veshala replied, taking his hand. The ceremony continued with traditional Kelhari blessings and speeches from other species representatives. But Veshala barely heard them. She stood at the side of the stage and watched her people celebrate. Children ran through the grass, the first Kelhari to play on this new world. Elderly people sat together, grateful to have a future they thought was lost. Families held each other, reunited after months of temporary separation. Kate approached her carrying a small box. Commander, the human captains wanted to give you this. It is not much, but it is traditional for us. Veshala opened the box. Inside was a small metal pin shaped like a phoenix. the mythical earth bird that rose from ashes. The word Phoenix Rising was engraved on it along with a date, the date of the rescue. We made 4,000 of these, Kate explained. One for every ship that came. It is our way of remembering, of honoring what we did together. Veshala held the pin carefully. I will treasure this. Thank you. You should also know, Kate added, that the rescue has changed things back on Earth. The whole galaxy saw humans drop everything to save strangers. Other species are starting to trust us more. We are being invited to join alliances that would not talk to us before, all because we did what felt right. Veshala smiled. You proved that doing the right thing has value beyond measurement. The celebration continued into the evening. As the planet sunset, casting orange light across the new colony site, Veshala found a quiet spot away from the crowds. She sat on the grass and looked up at the unfamiliar stars of her new home system. Danny found her there a few minutes later. He sat down beside her, groaning slightly. Getting too old for all this standing around at ceremonies. You are not that old, Veshala said. Tell that to my back, Danny replied with a grin. Then his expression grew more serious. How are you really doing, Commander? 6 months is not a long time to recover from losing everything. Veshala considered the question. I lost my world, my star. The home my people had known for thousands of years. But I did not lose my people. Because of you. Because of everyone who came, we all survived. Not just survived. We are rebuilding. We are growing. We are better than we were before. Better how? Danny asked. We were isolated, Veshala explained. We focused on logic and calculation. We kept to ourselves. We thought that was strength. But now we know different. Now we understand that strength comes from connection, from helping each other, from refusing to accept that anyone should face extinction alone. Danny nodded. Sounds like you learned the same lesson we did. Humans spent centuries fighting among ourselves before we figured out that cooperation beats competition every time. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Veshala asked the question that had been on her mind for months. What will you do now? Where will you go? Danny pulled out his communicator and showed her the screen. It was filled with messages, requests for help from across the galaxy, minor emergencies, major disasters, species in need of assistance. Turns out that when you prove you will actually show up to help, everyone starts calling, Danny said with a laugh. The Phoenix Rising is booked solid for the next year. Kate is already out on another rescue. Greg is transporting supplies to a refugee camp. Sophie converted her luxury liner into a mobile hospital. And the other species? Veshala asked. Are they still working together? More than ever, Danny confirmed. The Vryn just announced a new mutual defense pact with 6 other species. The Torlathi are coordinating a galaxy-wide resource-sharing network. The Sisterhood of Nexa is training medical personnel from dozens of worlds. Everyone saw what we accomplished together and decided they wanted more of that. Veshala felt hope swell in her chest. The galaxy is changing. Yeah, Danny agreed. And it is changing because one species sent a message, and another species refused to ignore it. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest actions. Crescent appeared, running toward them across the grass. The young technician was out of breath but smiling. Commander, Danny!
They found it!
The science team found a perfect location for the memorial. Memorial? Veshala asked. For our old star, Crescent explained. We want to build something to remember. The council decided we should include everyone who helped, all 4,000 ships, all the species. A monument to unity. Danny stood up, offering his hand to help Veshala rise. I think that is a fine idea. Every species that came to help should be remembered. As they walked back toward the ceremony, Veshala thought about what that memorial would mean. It would stand for generations, teaching young Kelhari about the day their species nearly ended, but was saved by the galaxy working together. It would remind everyone that hope and determination could overcome any obstacle. But more than that, it would stand as proof that the universe was better than anyone thought. That strangers would travel across space to save people they never met. That old enemies could become new friends. That impossible was just a word that meant not yet achieved. The celebration went late into the night. Veshala danced with her people, a traditional Kelhari dance that she had not performed in years. She saw humans trying to learn the steps, laughing at their mistakes. She saw Vryn warriors standing in respectful observation. She saw Torlothi merchants recording everything, probably to sell documentation of this historic moment, but she did not mind. As the New World's moon rose overhead, casting silver light across the colony site, Veshala stood with Danny and watched her people celebrate life. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For everything. For answering our call. For refusing to give up. For smiling when you should have been afraid." Danny looked at her with that expression she had come to love. That human smile that said everything would be okay because they had already decided it would be. "You know what the best part is?" Danny said. 6 months ago, you thought you were saying goodbye to the universe. Now you're building a new home, making new friends and starting new adventures. That is the real miracle. Not the rescue itself, but everything that comes after. Veshala nodded. He was right. The rescue was just the beginning. What mattered now was how they lived the lives they had been given. How they honored the sacrifice and effort of thousands of beings who came together to achieve the impossible. She looked at the stars above, so different from the stars of her old home, but they were beautiful in their own way. This whole new world was beautiful, and it was theirs, given to them by the kindness of strangers who became friends. Somewhere in the crowd, children were playing a game that mixed Kelhari traditions with human ideas. Elderly people were sharing stories with Vryn warriors about the old days. Young Kelhari were learning Torlothi language so they could communicate better with their new allies. Life continued, life grew. Life found new ways to thrive. And it had all started with a simple message sent into the dark. A farewell that became a beginning. A call that was answered with a smile. Veshala made a silent promise to herself and to her people. They would never forget this lesson. They would never again believe that mathematics could measure the value of hope. They would pass this story down through generations, teaching their children that impossible is just another challenge, that no one should face the dark alone, and that the greatest strength comes from helping others. The galaxy had changed, the Kelhari had changed, and it was all because one species looked at certain doom and said, "Not today. Today we smile. Today we fight. Today we prove that humanity cares." As the celebration continued around her, Veshala felt truly at peace for the first time in 6 months. Her people were safe. They had a home. They had friends across the galaxy. They had a future. And somewhere out there, she knew, Danny and his fellow humans were already preparing for the next call. The next impossible situation. The next chance to prove that when someone needs help, humanity answers, always with a smile. The end